What's up guys, it's Lord Both here with another video, and Avowed has released both on Steam and on Game Pass, and I've played it and I have thoughts, but first I'd like to go over some of the financial stuff that's coming out about Avowed. This comes to us from Insider Gaming. Avowed releases as a global top seller on Steam. Avowed has climbed the charts to become Steam's #1 selling game globally. Avowed reached Steam's top seller list 4 days before its full release, becoming America's #1 selling game on Steam. Now spotted by GameRanks, an ex-post by Aaron Greenberg, VP of Games Marketing at Microsoft, reveals Obsidian has clinched the top spot in the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Sweden, Finland, and more, making the game the #1 selling game globally on the platform. Avowed becoming a global top seller on Steam is an exciting achievement for Obsidian, considering the game is available for free through Game Pass. If players head over to SteamDB, they will see that Obsidian's new action RPG is topping the charts for trending games and popular releases too. Avowed peaked at 17,171 players on Steam on its launch day. So in terms of games, it looks like the game is selling well, especially considering the fact that it's free on Game Pass, which, to be honest, as you know, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this game. There was a lot of negative press surrounding some of the character models, especially the female character models, the uglification of women and all that. One of the head developers also seemed to have some beef politically with Elon Musk, where he was doubling down, saying how he's going to make the game more woke and more gay, just to piss Elon off, and just to own the chuds, basically. And yeah, is that person a dick for doing that? Yes. Yes, they are. Are they incredibly stupid for doing that? Yes, definitely. Does that automatically mean that their game is going to be absolute trash? No, it doesn't. You can not like somebody's politics, you can hate somebody's politics, and still know that they created good art. People think that the Sistine Chapel painting is a beautiful, beautiful piece of religious art, and that Michelangelo that painted it was a wonderful, amazing artist. Go look into Michelangelo's private life. In fact, go look into most of the Renaissance artists' private life. Those were terrible, awful people, socially, politically, even in their vices. What I'm saying here is that sometimes you have to separate the art from the artist. I mean, how many people think Kanye is a detestable person, yet they're still rocking out to the graduation? Another thing I'm hearing about is those Steam numbers. Oh, this game's only getting 17,000 players on Steam. It can't even crack 20K, yada yada yada. Well, yes, it came out free on Game Pass, and people like me, a lot of us who saw that negative press and saw those political statements that were kind of put off by them in terms of what we could expect from the game, and the idea that the game was being used to push certain ideologies or just wasn't going to be focused on the right things, we decided, oh, it's going to come out free on Game Pass, let me play for free just to see what it's like. It is still Obsidian, and I know that nobody who worked on old games from Obsidian that were really good is really there anymore, but Outer Worlds, even though that was a woke dumpster fire game politically, was a good game in terms of its serviceable mechanics and the basics around its story. So let's see what it's like for free. So something tells me that sales aren't even as good as they probably could be, even though they are at the top of the Steam charts apparently, because a lot of people that were turned off by that stuff are playing for free on Game Pass. But yeah, as you can see there, they're not really lying. Peak is about 17,500. It's a little down right now. I mean, it's midday here in America. But one of the games I see Avowed being compared to, and mostly because when a lot of people will play it, it reminds them of Skyrim, is Skyrim. And a lot of people are pointing to Skyrim's numbers on Steam being like, oh, well, you know, Skyrim has 30,000 players now. It's not even beating Skyrim, and Skyrim is a super old game. Well, one, yes, Skyrim has been re-released multiple times, that multiple generations of video game players have played Skyrim and know Skyrim, and it is kind of a comfort game. I mean, everybody knows Skyrim. Everybody who's been a video game player has played Skyrim at some point. My mother-in-law is a 48-year-old woman who's lived on a farm her whole life. She knows what Skyrim is. Also, when you compare it to the profitability charts and the longevity of the game, the re-releases and all that, as compared to this new game that just came out that's just had one single release. We're kind of comparing apples to oranges here in terms of the numbers. And by the numbers, I mean the sales numbers, not the people playing. Because there's a difference between the number of people that are playing at any given time and the sales numbers, the people actually buying the game. Another game I see this game being compared to in terms of the player count is Starfield. And it's typically in a rebuttal where people are saying, oh well, Starfield released on Game Pass and Steam at the same time. It didn't hurt Starfield's numbers. Well, there's a little difference in that. The first being that while Starfield had a little negative press, the vast majority of press around this game was hype. I mean, massive hype. People were excited to play Bethesda's first ever sci-fi adventure game. Then, as you can see from the graph here, it nosedived, mostly because people found out it was a boring, empty, shallow game filled with just a bunch of fast travel and boring, droning on character conversations, which we'll circle back to that in just a minute. But people were genuinely hyped for this game before it came out. That's why the player count when it came out was so high, both here and presumably on Game Pass. Alternatively, Avowed, though it's had a decent amount of press, there hasn't been as much hype for this game. Like I said, there's been a decent amount of negative press that's come out about this game. The anti-woke gaming crowd has hit this game pretty hard, and a lot of their criticism is just. Which again, circles back to why a lot of players, I think, are playing this on Game Pass rather than Steam, because it's free on Game Pass. Whereas a lot of people played Starfield on Steam and bought Starfield on Steam because they wanted to do things like run it through their high-end PCs and see the beautiful mystic sights of what Starfield promised to bring in terms of its visuals of the galaxy, right? Of course, again, what we found there was a whole bunch of empty space. So again, it's a little bit disingenuous to compare Avowed's player numbers to something like Starfield. And from all the press surrounding this game and the social media posts and all that, I feel like both sides are desperate to claim victory over this game's launch. The people who really like Avowed and what it stands for and really want the game to be successful are very quick to say, oh, the game's selling super well. While the people who don't like the game and what it stands for, and the people who made the game and what they stand for, are saying, ha ha ha, another woke failure. Nobody's playing it, it's crashing and burning. Which I don't think is necessarily true either. To be honest, I think this game is going to top out at maybe 23,000 players, and that'll probably be this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll probably see a fairly steady decline. The truth is, we're not actually going to know whether or not this game was a financial failure until we really know the budget for this game, which I don't think has been released yet. I can't assume that the budget for this game was something astronomical like a Concord 2 $250 million budget, right? Obsidian in their past have actually been pretty good at working on a stringent budget, even recently. But we might not ever learn what that budget is because, Microsoft, when they do their earnings calls, they go over these numbers. But they have so many different venues and so many fingers and so many pies that the gaming division, they're only going to get, a few minutes. And something tells me they're not going to be able to go over every video game Microsoft release in detail from all the studios they own. Now, I get the feeling that Avowed was supposed to be a fairly significant launch for them from Obsidian, so they might go over it, but that's yet to be seen. And if we don't learn what that budget is, we can't compare it to its sales, so we don't really know whether or not the game's going to be profitable or not. If I had to guess, based upon what the budget probably is, based around the number of people playing the game and the sales information we're getting, I'm going to guess that this game probably breaks even. Maybe a little successful, maybe a little not successful, but it's not an absolute failure, flop, disaster. At least that's what the data is telling me. Now, in terms of the actual review of the game, from the hours that I've put into it, I'm going to just refer to my X post that I made that you may not have seen if you don't follow me there. And I will add a little bit more information that I didn't write. It's just kind of easier to gather my thoughts just laying it out for you there. Anyway, here are my thoughts around Avowed. I played Avowed and I can literally hear the bosses over the shoulders of the devs whispering in their ear, no, make it feel more like Skyrim and look more like Baldur's Gate 3. The Cream NATO, shout out to our boy Cream, called it Skyrim for people with Down syndrome. I call it a poor attempt to make people an on-the-ground version of Baldur's Gate 3. That said, if you've never played an RPG before, or know Obsidian's legacy, or you can turn off your brain in the same way we all did to think things like Iron Man 2 was a good movie, you can probably love this game. And I really do have to emphasize that there. The game mechanically, it feels like Skyrim with dashes of like Dragon Age aesthetic, but really, really in terms of the character designs, the conversations, the lore, all of that, they really, really want you to feel like it's Baldur's Gate 3. The more I play of it, the less messy the story becomes. Probably because it's almost lifted directly from Baldur's Gate 3 and Greedfall of all things. Yeah, the story is based around this idea that you're an envoy from an empire going to a faraway continent that's dealing with a plague that's making everybody turn into almost ravenous zombie-like creatures. And immediately I was like, that's Greedfall. That's almost the exact story of Greedfall. They think we wouldn't notice, but we did. The game has almost no original thoughts. It's all pastel painting impressions of things other games have done before, often several times, and in most instances, better. Still, the gameplay is enjoyable though. Combat is good, though movement out of it is sluggish. Yeah, sprinting around the map in this game, just moving around, it feels almost like you're wading in water. It's not super sluggish, but it definitely is felt there. Conversations don't put me to sleep and are a bit more to the point than something like Starfield at least. Yeah, they're not super boring, monotonous, goes on forever, but they're not hyper engaging. I am learning a bit of the lore of the game, not just tuning everything out and skipping all the conversations, which I guess in terms of modern gaming for conversations in RPGs, that's a win. The leveling system is good, the UI and HUD are all readable and well done. I have to honestly say, yeah, the combat in this game is just, it's really, really good. It's actually fun. And it's not super difficult to get the hang of. There's many different ways you can fight an enemy and approach different battles. It's easy to become good at almost every kind of combat system, whether that's melee, magic, range, whether that's, with firearms or bows and arrows. I mean, this is a game that actually made me like and want to use magic. And I'm not a mage person in any gameplay usually. And the leveling system is fairly simplified, but it makes sense. And it actually makes you ponder and, kind of strategize what perks you're going to get, how that's going to affect the way you attack and strategize. And I think it's actually really good. I enjoyed that part. There are also minor gripes and technical gripes, but too specific to bother in an already long post. And because we're not in a post right now, I'll tell you, there are visual glitches in this game. When I loaded in, and I don't think this was a PC issue, all the trees, the treetops, were not actual leaf treetops. They were polygon triangles, which was a little jarring. In fact, a lot of the environment was polygon triangles when I first loaded in for my second round of playing. The second thing is I did have some clipping and fall through issues where enemies had fallen through the floor and just sort of their head was peeking through. It wasn't a game breaking bug, but it was there. Also, and I was warned about this, some of the aiming and reach and contact has some issues when you're in third person, and I played the game in third person. Though to be fair, I actually like the fact that you're able to play this game in third person because I hate playing fantasy RPGs in first person. It's just a non-starter for me. There are also times where my game would weirdly jump instead of dash, but then in some places it would dash instead of jump. I don't like how swinging your sword or firing your weapon or dodging or blocking consumes stamina, but sprinting doesn't consume stamina and jumping doesn't consume stamina. It's also worth noting that all the NPCs in this game that are not enemy NPCs or programmed to follow you at some point are static. They don't move. They're just there. They don't have any kind of AI or any kind of programming to walk around, interact, or do anything. And it's 2025, bro. You should be able to do that. But that's just some of the bigger technical gripes I have with this game. To continue, I said, in all, the more I play of it, the more I enjoy of it, but that's mostly just because it's the greatest hits of every trope of almost every successful fantasy RPG ever made. Pretty much everything story-wise with this game is lifted, again, from Baldur's Gate 3 and Greedfall. And that just isn't enough for me to buy it. If it wasn't free on Game Pass, I wouldn't have played it, given all the negative press put out about it and the developers' desire to mire themselves in personal political vendetta on social media. That didn't affect my thoughts on the game to the best of my abilities. It's hard not to, have any kind of bias whatsoever. But it just adds context as to why many, like me, rather play the game for free. Which is why you might not see a lot of people playing it on Steam, because they'd rather play it for free through Game Pass. Yet even after, there isn't a strong enough impression that compels me, and probably most others, to buy. If this was a small indie dev and this was their first game that they spent years on as an inspired project, I'd say it's great, but it's not. It's an Obsidian game, and that's why it's a 6 out of 10. That's kind of what it is. It's a little above extremely mid. I enjoyed my time playing it, but it's undeniable that this game is just the greatest hits of all the fantasy RPG tropes of all time, and that's it. There's nothing original about it. And if this is your first fantasy RPG ever, like I said, you'll really like it. But if you know where all this stuff comes from and what Obsidian used to do, it's just not comparable. And again, if it was a small indie studio and this was their first game and they took all those inspirative parts to make this, I would say, job well done. Really, really impressive first game. But it's not. It's a 6 out of 10 because it's an Obsidian game that did this, and because I do know where all those tropes came from, and because I do know it's just a bunch of stolen homework. I just can't accept it. I'm full on, you need to do better, Senator. Am I probably going to play more of it? Maybe. But to be honest, it's also a stacked month. And that might also be what's hurting some of their sales. Is that there's a lot of both good and kind of bad games coming out this month that people would rather play. And while I did enjoy my time with Avowed, I'd rather play Kingdom Come Deliverance too. But those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, go and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you watching all of it, and we'll talk to you again later.